crazy how the fans are able to make better Sega games than Sega. It reminds me of Sonic Mania, how a bunch of passionate fans got together to make what is possibly the best 2D Sonic game out there. Only that was a passion project that had Sega's involvement and the producer behind the Sonic series, Takashi Iizuka, behind it. And those fans were all hired to do mobile ports of Sonic games prior to working on Sonic Mania. For example, Christian Whitehead, a developer for Sonic Mania, was making Sonic fan games before Sega hired him. His fan game, Retro Sonic, that was developed under his Taxman alias, would put Whitehead on the map in the Sonic fan game community. And the retro engine that he developed for his fan games would be the same engine used in the Sonic mobile ports in Sonic Mania. This is a very stark contrast to what the SOR Remake team had to go through. Much like Nintendo and their fan games, Sega caught wind of the SOR Remake and pulled a Nintendo. Around 2011, 8 years after the remake's release date, they ordered the fan game to be taken down, never to be downloaded ever again. Roughly 8 years of development from a small team went down the crapper. Well, that was a short vid. Guess that wraps her all up. Except for one thing. Everybody collectively gave Sega the middle finger and kept the remake online, despite Sega's best efforts to use the powers of litigation to protect their IPs, as they put it. It was all for nothing. Much like the mythical Hydra, if you take down one download link for SOR Remake, 2 more get posted in its place. And if you tell the internet not to do something, they will do the exact opposite. Every single time. I don't know what came of Sega's attempted takedown, but the game is currently available to download and play, so I guess Sega just gave up. If the SOR Remake team was charging money, I could see that as being an issue, but this game was free to download with no microtransactions. And yes, this is still a Sega IP at the end of the day, but Sega was once a company that was very lenient on fan games of their IPs, even going as far as hiring those developers. It made absolutely no sense for them to take down the remake in the first place. If Sega really wanted to protect their IPs, then they should have made a new Streets of Rage game a lot sooner. I have seen some wild copyright bullshit over the years. Crazier than this, and not exclusive to the gaming industry. Not even the artists who write their own music are safe anymore. Herman Lee, a guitarist for Dragon Force, can't even jam to his own music that he wrote and recorded without getting a suspension from Twitch. And remember Metallica at BlizzCon? That's supposed to be For Whom the Bell Tolls, but copyright shenanigans prevented anyone from hearing it. Imagine sending Metallica a DMCA takedown, one that probably has their signatures on it since the Napster debacle. We are living in the dark ages. But I digress. After what seemed like an eternity, the fans were tired of waiting. It would be almost a decade after the third Streets of Rage before SOR Remake started development. The Saturn and Dreamcast had gone by without a new Rage game, and Sega would drop out of the console race. The possibility of a fourth game around this time was seemingly non-existent. If Sega wasn't going to give the fans what they wanted, they'll just have to grab some assault rifles and high-capacity magazines, march down to Sega's headquarters, and take their president hostage until their unreasonable demands were met. Or they can just make their own Streets of Rage game. That was probably the better option in the long run, and as an avid F-Zero fan myself, I sympathize with the SOR fanbase 100%. We are in the midst of an almost 2-decade-long drought of F-Zero games. We would make our own games for sure. It's just that Nintendo will send their airships to carpet bomb our houses if we even type the words Blue Falcon in the source code. And coding is really, really hard to do. But SOR Remake is actually not a ROM hack, and it doesn't use any of the Genesis game's coding at all. It wasn't even reverse engineered. Everything was built from the ground up, to recreate the look and feel of the original Genesis trilogy with all the characters, enemy AI, and the mechanics of each game. All done by spending God only knows how many hours playing these games. They even go as far as adding new mechanics into the remake as well. You can actually ride motorcycles, and punch people while driving. Turns out these motorcycle sections were supposed to be in Bare Knuckle 3, but were left on the cutting room floor. The SOR Remake team went ahead and included levels that were unplayable before. We even got jet skiing sections too. And that's just scratching the surface. We got a lot of ground to cover here. I tried messing around with the settings to try to get the best out of this game. This game has a ton of customization options for things like remixed music or the original Genesis music. Rage 3 mechanic implementations. There is blood in this remake. And not just some red pixels here and there. but actual enemies getting split in half from a katana or an explosion, or the intro to the Souther fight. Damn, son, he just turned some dude into a puddle. What could that guy have possibly done to make Souther that mad? Guns are now a thing, but Zan can use weapons now. In the third game, he made a ball of energy out of weapons he picked up. Not anymore. Zan is tired of this syndicate bullshit, and Shiva uses weapons now too. I just get a kick out of Shiva using his subordinates as target practice. The way of the fist just isn't working out anymore. There's a bunch of shit you can enable in the game, but you need to unlock them at the shop, which also needs to be unlocked. More on that later. As for joypad support, this is still a project that was 20 years in the making, so I wouldn't expect it to work with my 8-bit Do Genesis controller. But it actually supports my 8-bit Do Genesis controller without any joypad to keyboard converter. I can play this game the way God intended. I also thought about how I should record the gameplay. Do I use the full widescreen or the 4:3 aspect ratio? The widescreen looks great and all, but for some reason the frame rate can't hit 60 on certain stages. Even when there was nothing on screen, it looked pretty choppy at times. Also, there is this weird issue where my desktop was peeking through the right side. I could just crop it out in post, but I'd rather not go through the trouble. The 4:3 on the other hand ran at a solid 60 frames, no desktop peeking, and there was a scanline option that wasn't available in widescreen. It also solved another issue I had with the widescreen enabled: shimmering. This game shimmers like a bastard when widescreen is enabled. Once you notice it, you can't stop noticing it. There's no real upscaling available without some kind of modding needed. It doesn't run in high def given how old the game is. It wouldn't surprise me if the game was truly intended for the 4:3 ratio. Again, it's old. They started development in 2003 with the last update being 3 years ago. Maybe things will get better in the future. Or maybe it's my setup. PCs are like special and unique snowflakes after all. What might fix your game may not work on someone else's, and everyone's experience may vary depending on their setup. The remake was spearheaded by an avid developer and ROM hacker called Bomberlink for his bombergames.net site. Upon clicking the link to the site, I got this. Even trying to find any info about Bomberlink online is easier said than done, because he's been somewhat of a ghost lately. SOR Remake was a project that was started around 2003 by a small group of fans, each one more passionate than the next, with their latest update around November of 2020. Let's just go over some of the features this remake has to offer. You start with the 6 characters from the 3 games. The blitz moves from 2 are back, so is the rolling, OK meter, and stars from the 3rd game. A new running special move was added to most characters. If you ever wanted to see Axel do a Tatsu, here you go. Oh, and Max can run now. We've taken an amazing thing and made it even better. I do have some bad news though. They didn't fix the punch loops. I would normally be grateful to them if they fixed it, but if they did, I would actually miss it. I'm conflicted, and you can call for backup to kill everything again, just like the first game. Some characters don't call for backup, but they have their own special moves instead. Some are better than others. I never realized how much I missed these dudes and having the ability to murder everything. This is not a police brutality.
This is a fatality.
Enemies are all from the trilogy, with enemies from the first game being redrawn and reanimated. Because the sprites are so small and pixelated, they don't mesh well with the updated enemies from 2 or 3. Instead of just leaving them out because 2 and 3 had similar enemies in a more updated style, they went the extra mile to include them and updated their designs. They even included some of the censored characters from the North American version of Rage 3 alongside their uncensored Bare Knuckle 3 counterparts. I probably would have just scrapped them in favor of the uncensored enemies, but it's cool that they included them. This is the Everyone is Here of Streets of Rage, and all the iconic levels are here. The good old Pine Pot, the bridge, the boats. I don't know why, it just makes me happy that they included the boat horns. The factories are all here. The weird robot shit is here. The ninjas are here. The kangaroos are here. Robot X is here. There's 2 versions of Shiva here. Ash is here. The jetpack dudes that I hate with a passion are all here. If video games could be food, the SOR remake would be an absolute mukbang. They even found the time to create original enemies and characters, like Rudra, or this trucker, or Cody? And this dude with the hockey mask. I thought he was some OC at first, but then I looked at the North American box art for the first game. There's our boy, getting his face pushed in by Blaze's foot. And that sniper in the window? He's here too. And no, I still haven't scratched the surface of what this game offers. Levels are all taken from the trilogy, with some new ones added as well, including this level where you're on top of this train and a bunch of jump warnings show up, a level that totally never happened in the 4th game. I don't know what you're talking about, but each level, regardless of what game they're from, all flow together into one adventure. If you want to play the Streets of Rage 1 storyline, you can do that. If you'd rather do 2 or 3, you can do that too. You might even be able to combine the plots of each game into one adventure. Certain levels can have secret passageways that lead to other areas and different paths, which can change what storyline you're currently on. It also changes what final boss you're going to fight. You can fight the man himself, or fight Shiva as the final boss. What the remake strives to do is take all 3 games and make one cohesive experience out of them, which is something I wish more game devs could do with their IPs now that I've played SOR Remake. Each level has a cutscene linking it to the next level you're going to play. The boss you just beat gives you information, or your helicopter crashes on this island. Those are just a few examples. Sometimes it gets a little weird, like the segue from the White House to this bamboo forest. Were they right next to each other? How did we get here? I am certain they took inspiration from Revenge of Shinobi when they made this level. Made even more certain when the Japanese restaurant level has actual Revenge of Shinobi music in the background. And don't think that I didn't notice you guys taking assets from Shinobi 3, especially the cave level, which turns out to be an underground robot laboratory, and not a haven for mutated four-armed samurai. And we are still not done scratching the surface of what SOR Remake has to offer. There is a shop in this game, a huge-ass shop with tons of stuff you can purchase with the money you rack up during your playthroughs. Imagine walking up to the register and the clerk asks you what your payment method is, and you drop a bunch of sunglasses and kangaroo leashes on the table. And the Ankhs. Lots of enemies drop these things. I didn't know Mr. X's followers were all fans of ancient Egyptian mythology. You can buy stuff like alternate game modes, an AI buddy to fight by your side because you have no friends, with a bunch of options for how you want the AI to play, and even more characters. Your boy unlocked Shiva first because of course I was. Shiva Mania 2. Electric Boogaloo, bitches. If you want the kangaroo or the whip girl, or the stereotype, or Rudra, who is an original character made by the team, go for it. You can unlock Mr. X. Time to remind the syndicate who's in charge. You wanna know what I did? I bought the CPU ally, set him to aggressive, and made him play as Mr. X. Just sit back and let him cook. It's like bringing your kid to Disneyland and watching him have the time of his life. And you also get a ton of cheats and extras that you can enable, like Blaze's uncensored upskirt sprites from the Japanese Bare Knuckle 2, because you're a terrible person. You look her in the eyes and tell her what you're buying. How do you sleep at night? I can't stay mad at you. And instead of just going over every single cheat, I'm just gonna enable all of them and show you what that's like. But if you haven't noticed, everything is pretty fucking expensive. You need to get money. How much?
Loads of money!
Collect all the stuff that drops from enemies and barrels and whatever, and all that stuff you acquired is converted into money after you either beat the game or get a game over. They tax you for having 2 players? I have a social life and this game thinks that's a problem. Maybe the game will go all HAL 9000 and throw my friends into space. And I used level select for the sake of capturing these levels. And the game taxed the shit out of me for doing that too. And because everything is so expensive and one playthrough doesn't even add up to 100k in shop money, it would take at least 15 or maybe even 20 playthroughs to rack up enough points to buy everything. I mean, this game is damn good and I would definitely play it more than once, but these prices are fucking stupid. You know, you could wait for Blaze to fall asleep and start shoplifting. Only if you start the game anywhere between 5 and 7 in the morning. Or set the time on my PC because I got responsibilities and shit. But if she catches you stealing, you'll be banned from the shop until you beat the game again, and pay for what you stole. So you're gonna have to play the remake a shitload of times no matter what you do. And the remake just might be the hardest version of Streets of Rage I have ever played. I'm playing this on version 5.2, which is the latest update. Maybe the difficulty has changed over the years, but the AI this time is much smarter than I remember them being. They will constantly try to get behind you if you fight someone. They move just far enough away from your punches, causing you to whiff accidentally. These guys just dance around your hitboxes, and when you're about to throw an enemy, they all move out of the way. Normally, they would be dumb enough to just stand there and let you throw people into them. The AI here is probably better than it was in the Genesis games. Even on normal, the jobber enemies actually put up a fight. I haven't even cranked the difficulty up to hard or even mania yet. And if you think that because there's no option to save your progress, you'll have to beat it in one sitting or start all over again, press the F12 key to create a temporary save state while closing the game. So when you reopen, you continue where you left off, points and all. Great for save scumming if the game starts giving you shit too. Of course, one of the most important things about Streets of Rage is the music composed by Yuzo Koshiro and Motohiro Kawashima. I've gone into detail about them in my Streets of Rage 3 video if you want to check that out, but I can't imagine these games having any other music. It's become the core of the game's identity. The jock jams, the new jack swing, the 4-on-the-floor beats, the aggressive techno, whatever the fuck you call the music from the third game. It just wouldn't be Streets of Rage without their music. Sure, the remake team went ahead and included all the original Genesis music and some Master System stuff as well, but they went about 10 steps further, just like everything else. They remixed every single piece of music from the series. Even the music that was left on the cutting room floor got remixed as well. Original music was also written too. This couldn't have been a simple task, especially remixing the music from the second and third games. If you had told me to make a note-for-note remix of something like Spin on the Bridge, I wouldn't say, "When do you need that by?" I would tell you to go fuck yourself because Spin on the Bridge is ridiculous. There was one man who was crazy enough to actually attempt a remix of this. A man called BGM1401. His real name was Paul Clark. Paul contributed a bunch of music to SOR Remake, including a remix of Expander. I like him already, and it turns out this game is dedicated to him. Sadly, he passed away in 2020, but you are appreciated. Rest in peace, champ. Another huge contributor to the soundtrack was Gecko Yamori. You can find a bunch of Yamori's remixes of various video game music online. His Genesis-style remix of the first Wily level from Mega Man 10 is how I first discovered him. It's some next-level shit. I remember him having a YouTube channel with a bunch of Genesis-style remixes, but it has since been taken down and efforts have been made to preserve his content. He now goes by the name Savaged Regime. He still does tons of Genesis chiptune stuff, and some original video game music here and there, like the game Xeno Crisis. They were also joined by Groovemaster 303 and BAC. I think BAC means blood alcohol content if I'm not mistaken, or maybe Big Ass Chihuahua. Whatever. The thing about these remixes is that some I like more than the actual Genesis games. Some are fine, but the Genesis soundtrack is usually what I prefer to hear when I fire this thing up. It is in no fault of anyone who worked on the game, but in order to match the works of Koshiro and Kawashima, you need Sideshow Bob-sized feet to fill those shoes. And I would give the sound team the coveted Smokin' Sexy style rank just for their efforts alone. What really makes the Genesis music so special is what Koshiro and Kawashima were able to get out of the Genesis hardware. It doesn't sound like any other 16-bit game, and I can't really imagine it without the sounds generated by the Yamaha 2612. Most of it doesn't even sound like video game music. You could probably hear these songs in a nightclub, and those nightclubs are where they got their inspiration from, drawing inspiration from all genres of electronic dance music, with a lot of that influence coming from Europe and the United States. Some songs might even sound similar to something you may have heard if you were a part of that scene in the early 90s. It really is something special, and the remake team treats it with the respect it deserves. It's not a replacement, but more of a token of appreciation to Koshiro and Kawashima. Passion is a word that comes to mind a lot when I think about this remake. From every aspect of its development team throughout its 20-year lifespan. We live in a day and age where remakes, reboots, remasters, definitive editions, and whatever you want to call them are all over the place. These are, for the most part, crapshoots on whether or not they are going to be great or downright terrible. A lot of times they come from games that don't need a remake at all. Did we really need a remaster and a remake of The Last of Us in the span of a decade? No, we didn't. Especially when an obscure, underappreciated game that's only available on an outdated system could greatly benefit from it. And it's not just games, it's TV shows, movies, comics, all kinds of stuff. But you can easily tell when a remake is made with love and attention for the source material. And you can tell when it's a cash grab made by people that never gave a shit about it even after they were hired. And if you, for some reason, didn't like the Streets of Rage remake, just make your own damn game. Because you can totally do that. I'm not doing the blackjack and hookers joke again. This is like the third or fourth time. No, seriously. You can make your own custom Streets of Rage game. This remake allows you to do that. Edit the palettes. Change the enemy names to dick butt or whatever. Download mods and play all kinds of user-generated content. Don't like the name Streets of Rage Remake? Change the title to Bare Knuckle Remake. There's even a survival mode. Now I'm convinced the Rage 4 team took some inspiration from this. If I were to mention every single detail about this game, and I covered a lot mind you, this video would never end. And I know some of you would love to watch a video of mine that goes on forever, but I got shit to do. In my opinion, Streets of Rage Remake is the gold standard for remaking video games and for fan projects in general. And instead of sending threatening emails and lawyers to shut these people down, maybe these AAA companies should try hiring them instead. They'll probably do a better job than your actual employees. Look at Sonic Mania. I like to think it turned out pretty good. So in conclusion, if you want that definitive Streets of Rage experience, it doesn't get any more definitive than this. Now it's time for me to settle the age-old question. Who would win in a fight between Mr. X and Mr. X? I think we lose no matter who wins.